AI Voice Agent Guide, the reality behind the scenes. So if you haven't seen my other video, then I'll link it up there now. Click on that first because this video follows on and gives the practical and the realities behind creating an AI agent. It's not so much about the how to actually create the agent, which that other video is about. This video is more about the implementation, the challenges and the realities behind it. So everyone's talking about AI voice agents, but few discuss the implementation realities. Now, before I jump into explaining exactly what I'm going to cover in this video, just a quick shout out to the AI Freedom Finders school community, which is entirely free to join right now. If you either search it or you can use the link in the description below, you can then click through and join the community. It's entirely free. There's loads of helpful people in there. There's templates, blueprints, guides, prompt ideas, and other really helpful content. If you don't know who I am and this is your first time on the channel, then my name is Jamie. I am an AI entrepreneur and I'm building out agents for clients. So let's jump straight in. The big decision and the biggest challenge generally facing an agency once they've deployed or when they're thinking about deploying a voice agent for a client is who owns the accounts. There are a number of different accounts and I covered it in the previous video and I will cover it more in detail in this video later on, but generally speaking, you've got a number of different accounts such as the voice, the AI agent, the managing agent, servers, all those different things. The question is, who owns them, who pays for them? Now, ultimately, the answer is always going to be the client because they're the one that wants the service. So they will ultimately pay for it, but who pays for it in the initial period of time? And again, we'll go over the pros and cons of that in this video. The two options really are the client owns the accounts, which is clearly this option over here, or the agency owns the accounts. So if the client owns the accounts, then they pay the various companies directly and the agency is given the login details. And the agency fee is then in addition to all the other costs. So the client will pay a number of different accounts, one of which will be your fee for creating and then maintaining the voice agent for them. The alternative option is that the agency owns all the accounts and that the agency handles everything. They then bill the client a single figure each month and the client will then pay one bill to the agency, whatever that amount is. So, first of all, the agency account model. Well, there are some really good pros here. It's a single point of control. That means that you, as the agency, you control all of the payments from the agent, from your client, and you will then have to make all the payments. But even when you're making all your payments to all your service providers, you actually only have to probably make 6 payments in total, despite however many clients you've got. So for the agencies and the AI and all of the other voice services that you're using, they will also benefit because they will have to deal with just you rather than if you've got 20 clients, then rather than having to deal with 20 clients each. The client only pays one bill. It keeps it really neat and tidy. From their accounting perspective, it's much easier. They can say, this is one bill for the AI voice agent that we've implemented. Brilliant. Easier to manage as well. And oftentimes as an agency, we'll be able to access some volume discount because we've got so many people, so many minutes, each of the different processes that we're using offer discounts with for their enterprise clients. And there's also a streamlined process for client onboarding, and this makes sense. So if you think about it, you've got a new client, they've just turned up and they're really enthusiastic to work with you and get the voice agent that you can offer them up and running. But then you turn around to them and say, oh, by the way, you just need to set up 6 accounts. Or even if you do it for them, you still have to set up 6 accounts. It's quite a lot of work and it's not necessarily the most practical way of doing it. However, on the flip side, the cons are that there's a higher upfront cost to you as the agency. This not necessarily on a client by client basis, but more right if you're at the beginning of setting up an agency, you're going to have to buy all these different accounts. You're going to have to pay the subscriptions until you've got some clients actually working with you, then it's going to be difficult. And again, moving up the tiers in subscription, it could be a little bit tricky. You're going to have to try and manage that cash flow a little bit better. There's going to be a higher bill to the client, right? So the client is going to look at your end bill and go, oh, that's a lot of money. Why am I paying all that? They don't necessarily understand the pass-through costs. And again, we'll come on to that later in the video, but it's also more complex for your billing because you have to then try and split up all the different costs and there's a greater responsibility that comes with that. Finally, a point here in the UK, but I'm pretty sure it's similar for other countries as well, is that there is a cash flow consideration. If you're charging your clients 10 times more because your costs are actually only 1/10 of the total cost of the AI voice agent, for example, then actually HMRC are going to be asking you to go VAT registered much quicker And that could have an implication. It just basically means that your company is turning over a lot of money. It means it's bringing in a lot of money, even though it's spending a lot of money. So whereas if you go for the other model we'll cover in a second, that isn't the case. So the client-owned account model. Now this is exactly as it says on the tin. The client owns all the accounts. They set them all up with their own email addresses. They own them all. You might run them, you might not run them, it depends. They will generally give you a password, at least until you've got it all set up and running. So the good side for you is that it's much easier in terms of trying to disaggregate all your accounts. It's direct client billing. So let's say, for example, Vapi, you use Vapi. Vapi will bill the client directly. If you're using OpenAI, OpenAI will bill the client directly. Brilliant. There's a clear cost separation and it's more transparent. So your client completely understands that they are paying 6 different costs. 5 of those costs are not to you, and only 1 of those costs is to you, and that single cost is the cost to them of both the build of the agent plus then the ongoing management. And so they can really understand and perhaps more appreciate just what the cost is for your service and whether or not it stacks up for them. Client ownership, and this is kind of linked to the second point. So the clients feel they've got that ownership of the agent. They don't feel like they're renting it from you. It's their thing you've set up for them. You've obviously paid them to do that, but then they've got that and they can hold on to it. And if you disappear or if they want to stop working with you, as is the next point, it gives them the confidence that they can walk away, or indeed you can walk away, part ways, whatever it is, and gives them more confidence. It's also easier to scale. The cons, however, it's more setup work, as I kind of already alluded to. You're going to have to set up all these different accounts, or you're going to have to ask your client and chase them to set up all these different accounts. You're going to have a lot of different accounts to manage. If it's 6 accounts for each of your different clients, and you've got 10 clients, that's 60 different accounts. Now I've got to manage with passwords and everything else. It becomes a bit of a noise, becomes a headache, becomes quite challenging. It's probably not the best way to do it as an agency. And you have less control, right? If they lose their password, or if they change their email address or whatever, or someone's on holiday and it doesn't work, you're really, really stuck as to how you can get that done. And finally, your client has to pay multiple bills, which again on their bookkeeping, it just makes it more difficult for them. So what are the platform requirements and what do we need? Well, we need something like Vapi. It doesn't have to be Vapi, but Vapi is the one I used in the previous video, so I'm just going to go with that. And that's an account for specific needs. And that is going to charge you 13 cents per minute on average for all of the different costs. The second thing you're going to need is Make or N8N, something similar to that, so a sort of a low code option if that's the way you want to go. And that's what I did in the previous video again. That really is a cost dependent model based on the number of executions, which is like processes that you make. And it really depends on the package as to how much it costs per execution. And it also depends on how complicated your process is with a voice agent. So it's difficult to say how much it's going to cost, but let's just say it's not a huge amount per call. Probably literally maybe even like 1 cent or something like that. So it's not a huge amount of money. And as you get bigger and you get more clients, those clients make more phone calls. It really, really, really brings those prices even further down. So it's not a lot. Twilio. So Twilio is where we'll get our actual physical phone number from. So if somebody wants to phone us, we want to pretend that we're in the US or the UK or Australia or wherever it is, then you need a Twilio phone number. It doesn't have to be Twilio, there are other packages available, but from what I've looked at, Twilio seems to be the best for enterprise level, which is where we're all obviously aiming to be, and also the best in terms of API and connectivity. There is also a charge for calls per minute and SMSs. It's not prohibitive, but it is something to bear in mind. I mention SMS because if your voice agent, for example, sends out a booking link via SMS, then there's an additional cost there. Server. So this isn't something that you need to start with, certainly if you're offering voice agents out, but something that we're doing at the moment is building out our own server so that we've got a much better platform, much better service to offer our clients. This is something I'm going to talk about more in the future. I don't really want to go into it here in this video because it's a whole video in itself, but there is a huge amount of benefit to doing this, but you don't need to start with. And again, the costs are massively variable and will reduce with the amount of clients that you've got. Then you've got the LLM and the AI model. This pricing can be wrapped in within Vapi, and Vapi do offer you a number of different models. I can't remember them all, but you've certainly got Claude and OpenAI. I think there's Meta there as well. And they range in price from literally 1 cent per minute, which is for one of the OpenAI models. I think it might be 4.0 mini, all the way through to like 56 cents a minute, which is for the most expensive one, which I can't remember what it is, but it's their most up-to-date one. And then you've got voice models as well. So things like 11 Labs, you're talking approximately $10 per hour of chat, because the way that 11 Labs price their costs is around, they give you a total number of credits, you use up a credit for each minute you use on their transcription model. And of course, at the moment, with the way in which most AI voice agents are set up, it runs from customer phones, that is voice to text via AI. You then put that text through the AI model. The AI then will understand it, respond with some text. You then will need to take that text and you'll need to convert it back to voice. And this is where the voice model comes in. So obviously the more text, the more speaking that your AI does. And obviously the more calls it does, the more it speaks, etc., then the more total text it will convert it back into audio, the more it will create. So again, it's difficult to pin down on per call basis or per minute basis because it depends on the number of words, a number of other things. But roughly speaking, you're talking about $10 per hour. So platform cost breakdown, I've kind of covered this already. You've got subscription tiers, the number of different subscription tiers, execution costs, and then you've got the voice generation really. Again, as I've said, you've got the usage-based cost drivers. So you've got the per call charges. So each call incurs a fee. This accumulates quickly. You've then got the processing fees. So the voice processing carries charges and it influences the total cost, but it's not a huge amount. This is generally done on Twilio's end, or it can also be in VAPI. And then you've got the API call volumes. Again, these are very small figures, but I just wanted to include these. So watch out for hidden costs, and you really need to ensure that you have understanding of the total flow from your client or your clients picking up the phone to phone your client and speaking to them or speaking to the AI agent, all the way through that chain that I've just described and back to that person until they've completed that whole phone call and that transaction and hung up, and any monthly overhead costs that are also associated with each of the different accounts, because some of the accounts do have standing costs as well as variable ones. How do we as agency owners bill these different costs? Well, roughly speaking, I would say there are three main ways of doing this, and there's obviously variations on all these three, but basically you've got the pass-through model. This is saying direct costs and management fee. So how do we as AI agency models price our packages effectively? Now, you've obviously got the pass-through model, which is the direct costs all go to the customer and you then charge a management fee. Very simple, most transparent, and in some ways great for the customer. I think it's probably good in terms of the billing and transparency, but I think in terms of the actual ongoing management, it becomes very, very difficult. And I wouldn't advocate for this model really. I think it's, if you're just getting off the ground and you want to ensure that you don't take any risk on, then passing the cost through and knowing that you're going to just take a fixed fee is probably a good way to start. But I think very quickly you're going to realize that model is probably not a scalable model. The second option is the package model. So that's an all-inclusive price, and it's probably the easiest for the client. They know they're going to pay a set amount per month, and perhaps it can be with a fair usage clause in there, or perhaps it's unlimited. If you've priced yourself sufficiently well and you know how much calls they make per month, and you've got a sufficient buffer in there, and you're confident that they won't go over that buffer, then you know that you're going to have your margin in there. And if they perhaps have a quieter month, you make a little bit more profit, and if they have a busier month, you make a little bit less profit, and you weather those different fluctuations. I would say that's the most dangerous, though, until you get experience and you really understand that process, it can be quite tricky. And the final option is, of course, the baby bear option is the hybrid model. Just in the middle is a base plus variable costs. So for example, you charge your costs and you might include 80 to even 100% of the anticipated costs, and then you might then add in for X number of minutes per month that's included, and then you might add tiering on top of that for if they trigger over that, then it goes into the next tier, so bronze, silver, platinum, gold, or gold, platinum, whatever it is. Or you could do it a different way and say you're just actually going to track their minutes and you're going to charge them a flat fee, whatever that fee is, that'll cover all your costs, and then you're going to charge them a per minute cost on top of that, and it might be just slightly more than what's needed. So again, you know that no matter what happens, you've got your profit baked in and the customer's not going to cause you a lot of headache and hassle. So in terms of the account setup process, again, this is a massive topic, and we could go into it for absolute hours, but in essence, you want to select the platform. Are you going to use VAPI, Bland, SynthFlow, or even your own process, which we're in the processes of setting up ourselves? Then you need to create all the different accounts, whether you're going to create it just for your agency or whether you create it for the customer, that's TBC, depending on which model you go down, but you're going to have to create probably a Make or an N8N account. If you're really new to AI agency, I would suggest Make. I think N8N is quite deep. It is no code technically, but there is quite a lot to understand, and it's certainly a little bit less forgiving in terms of if things aren't working, trying to figure out why it's broken. You've got your OpenAI accounts, you're going to need a developer account for that, and then 11 labs, and then integration setup. So you need to really put all these things together, connect them via APIs, connect them all to Make or N8N, make sure that the flows are all working, review, configure them, make sure that everything's working. And then it's going to be test. So you're going to need to test those connections that you've just set up, make sure that they talk to each other. You're going to need to test the flows to make sure that when the AI agent is called, that the flows trigger off correctly in the right process, depending on what you need, whether it's just an information chatbot, whether it's a calendar chatbot, whether it's actually a different kind of chatbot altogether. And then obviously you need to test the prompts. Are the answers that the AI agent is giving appropriate for the questions that it's being asked? And if the answer is no, then it's probably because the prompt isn't quite right, either at the system level or at the local level. And then it's handover. And all I've put here is not one and done. And what I mean by that is that just because you're handing over a completed AI agent, that does not mean it's the end of your job and then you can just take on a recurring fee. In fact, quite the opposite. I would say that if you have done this a few times now, the first 4 parts should be very, very quick for you to do, and the majority of the work happens at handover because you'll be wanting to iterate and improve to ensure that your customer has the absolute best experience and that the prompts really are working and that the flows continue to work. And that's where the ongoing management comes in really. So it's about monitoring their usage, tracking their cost. Even if they're paying those costs themselves directly, you as the agency need to be ensuring you're helping them. Are the costs appropriate? Is it because people haven't hung up the call and the agent is continuing to bill you for those minutes incorrectly, or perhaps you need to adjust things? Performance optimization. So you're looking at, are you choosing the right LLM? Actually, could you downgrade to a more basic but faster LLM because the conversation isn't that difficult? Or actually, does it need to be the opposite? Do you need to get a more complicated LLM because the questions that are being asked are particularly tricky and complex, and actually people don't mind waiting a couple of seconds for a good response, and it's better to wait 2 seconds for a good response than to only wait 1 second but get an inadequate response. And then finally, updates and maintenance, depending on the way in which you go about this. And I would encourage you to go for the most inclusive package you can for your clients. I would encourage you to say that all updates, all maintenance is included as part of your ongoing fee. That's part of what they pay for, and that actually as you iterate and improve your package for new customers, you absolutely roll that out to them as well. So that's kind of it for this presentation. I just really wanted to cover those bits and just really shout out again the AI Freedom Finders school community. It is free for now. It is going to be charged in the future, but if you get in for free, I'm pretty sure it's going to be free for life. That's my intention. There may be some bolt-on courses which are separate, but I'd really encourage you, if you're not already a member, to jump into the community, get talking to the other agency owners that are in there and trying to understand and get started. This is a really great opportunity for everybody, and I think we're genuinely adding value to the businesses that we're providing these AI voice agents for, and not just voice agents, but that's obviously what this video is about. I hope to see you in the next video.